Hi, my name is Ashley and I'm a mom of 2 little girls. I have a 3-year-old named Kylie and I also have a 14-month-old named Mia. So before I decided to become a stay-at-home mom, I was actually a certified public school teacher for several years, and I was constantly worried about the topic of praise with my students, because in your teacher education program, you are constantly drilled about the value of making sure that you are praising your students, especially those who are on their best behavior, those who are working incredibly hard on whatever the assignment is that you've given them. You're just constantly on the lookout and trying to catch them doing something good. And when I became a parent, my first inclination was to apply those principles to my daughter as well. But once I discovered Montessori, everything that I thought I knew about how to motivate my child was completely turned on its head. As it turns out, saying good job is not necessarily a good thing. So from one busy parent to another, today I'm going to be sharing with you some reasons why you should stop praising your children and instead offer you a couple of tips on how to provide encouraging, constructive feedback instead. So first things first, there is an overwhelming amount of research available now that all points to the negative effects of offering praise to children. And the type of praise that I'm referring to is the typical kind that you and I most likely grew up with, the kind that we are most inclined to offer our children because of that. Things like, good job, great work, buddy. Oh, you were such a good girl today. Yes, I love your painting, honey. It's so beautiful. You are such an artist. And even, oh my goodness, you are so smart. Sometimes it even goes so far as to offer very young infants who don't even really understand what we're saying to them yet praise for things that they're doing anyway, like good clapping. And by themselves, no, none of these phrases is horrible, and it's certainly not the worst thing that you could be saying to your child, by far. But that's exactly the point. People often have a very hard time understanding why saying something nice to your child that they feel is encouraging to them and complimentary, why that could be such a terrible thing. And in and of itself, it's not a terrible thing, because you have good intentions. Your child, especially if they're very young, they seek and crave your approval, so it feels good. It feels like a win-win for everybody. But what the research is showing us, and I will leave some links down below for you guys if you're interested in reading more about this beyond this video, what the research is showing us is that praise actually has a series of more long-term negative effects. And what's interesting is all of this research that's coming out is fairly recent, over the last several decades or so, but all of it backs up every single thing that Dr. Montessori advocated for when it came to not praising children in her classrooms. So she truly was a woman ahead of her time, and she definitely had it right. So what the research is saying is that verbal praise is basically at the same level as tangible rewards for a child, giving them candy or cookies or little gold stickers. They're basically saying that praise is a form of sugar-coated control. And it's control in the sense that we are doing something to our children in order to manipulate and change their behavior for our convenience, as opposed to working with our children to help guide them and teach them the proper way. The fact of the matter is, young children seek to please us. They want our approval. It is something that they crave biologically. And we are basically exploiting that by offering praise as a form of manipulation, as a way to change their behavior for our convenience. And I say convenience because it truly is taking the easy way out to offer praise instead of taking the time to sit down and have a conversation with the child and figure out what exactly is going on that caused the misbehavior that you're trying to address, to take the time to explain to them what needs to actually happen in a socially acceptable way, and to basically give them the skills that they need. That is a much more time-intensive, a much more emotionally intensive process for us. So instead, yeah, sometimes it is a lot easier to just say, oh, I really like the way you're sharing, and hope that that is enough motivation for them to continue sharing in the future, as opposed to actually having those conversations, which can be a lot more difficult. Another really big reason to steer clear of praise is because it turns your child into a praise junkie. It is very addictive by nature, and they constantly seek more of it once they get used to hearing it. So even if we are not trying to be manipulative in our praise, even if our praise is completely genuine, something that we really did truly appreciate about our child, and we just wanted to compliment them on it with no malintention behind it whatsoever. Even under that circumstance, your child, after hearing it so much, eventually is going to come to expect it, and they're going to feel like they need that external motivation from you in the form of praise in order to feel good about themselves, instead of looking inward and feeling pride in their own accomplishments. And even though your child might not be consciously aware of it at all, the only motivation that your praise is giving them is the motivation to seek more praise. Eventually, what constant praise does is it creates this situation where your child is only in it for the praise. They're only engaging in the behavior that you're praising because you're there watching them and they're receiving that positive attention from you. And as soon as you and the praise are gone out of the picture, they suddenly have lost the motivation to continue doing that good behavior. So in the example of sharing, let's say that you notice on a play date that your child has offered their toy to the other child completely of their own will, and you're happy about that, you're really impressed, you want to capitalize on that and reinforce that good behavior in the hopes that they'll do it again in the future. And you're very quick to say something like, "Oh, good sharing," or "Oh, I like the way you're sharing," or "I'm so proud of you for sharing." Saying any of those things, all of those things, is external motivation for your child. It doesn't matter how you word it. And once you step out of the room, your child is not likely to engage in the same type of sharing behavior because your attention on that no longer exists. By constantly offering this external motivation in the form of praise for a behavior like sharing, you're basically teaching your child that sharing is only valuable because they're getting your attention for it. And as soon as that's gone, then sharing for the act and sake of sharing itself, for being generous to someone else, that is not valuable enough for them to continue that behavior. And perhaps one of the most talked about research studies in this area of the effects of praise on children was conducted by a woman named Carol Dweck, and she looked at the differences between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And she basically divided kids into two different groups and gave each of them similar examinations, and some of the children received praise in the form of verbal praise like, "You're so smart," and then the other group of children received praise in the form of things like, "Wow, you really tried hard on that." And she looked at their overall performance on these different examinations and found that the children who were praised with, "Oh wow, you're so smart," typically tended to not do better in subsequent examinations, versus the kids who were told that they tried really hard, they ended up doing better and better. And what this research basically tells us is that kids who are offered praise like that eventually become afraid, really, to continue doing those types of behaviors, the ones that got them the praise in the first place, because they're afraid of messing up. They're afraid of looking like a failure and not being able to receive that praise anymore. And so all of these bigger picture reasons for why we shouldn't be praising children are exactly why Dr. Montessori said not to offer praise to children in her classrooms. She noted that right away, that children who were intrinsically motivated by the task that they were doing, by the behavior that they were doing, were most likely to continue doing those behaviors. And at this point, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, well, that's all well and good, but if I'm not supposed to be telling my child good job, then what am I supposed to be saying? And I've got you covered, because I'm going to share with you 5 tips for what you can say instead of good job. Tip number 1 is don't say anything at all. And for some parents, this might be a hard pill to swallow because sometimes silence can be really uncomfortable. But the truth of the matter is, you do not need to say something every single time you notice something that you feel like you need to reinforce. Especially for young children, if they are very focused on a task and they're not even looking at you, oftentimes there is no need to fill that void, that silence, by saying good job. Just not necessary at all, because all that does in effect is break their concentration, and then perhaps they're not even interested in doing whatever it was that they were doing in the first place. And if you're worried and feeling a bit neglectful, like you're not being a good parent by not saying something, you think maybe your child thinks that you're not proud of them because you didn't say something, I urge you not to feel that way, because the reality is there are going to be lots of other opportunities where you are going to be encouraging your child and celebrating with your child over something, and they're going to feel that in all of those other moments. The point is, you don't need to have to say something every single time. A lot of times, especially with young children, they are very proud of themselves. They don't need to hear anything from you. They're like, I've got this, and they're totally content to just revel in their own accomplishment. And if they happen to look up at you and make eye contact with you after they've done something amazing, then the best thing that you can do in that moment is to just smile and make eye contact back. And the fact that you're proud will shine through in that action. There's no need to add words to it. Tip number 2 is to describe what you see. And this is a very objective way to offer praise in a situation where maybe you feel like you need to say something, or your child has come to you looking for some sort of a reaction and you're not sure what to say. Just say what you see. You could say, you used all the colors in that painting, or you got dressed all by yourself, or just even simply, you did it. This one works really well for children who perhaps are accustomed to receiving praise already, and so you find them often coming to you saying, look at my drawing, mommy, and they're kind of waiting to see what you're gonna say. And typically we would say, you know, oh my gosh, that's beautiful, honey, or wow, I love it, you're such an artist. Again, something that's really truly over the top and not necessary. Instead of offering that high level of a response, or even just a very basic, good job, honey, because it's the 40th drawing that they've shown you today, instead of going that route, by sharing something that you notice about their drawing instead, that's providing them with very specific feedback that they can use. They can tell exactly what it is about their drawing that you've noticed and that you appreciate. And that is a lot more helpful and encouraging for your child. Tip number 3 is to focus on their effort. And while this can apply to a variety of different situations, the one that is probably going to be most applicable for this tip is when your child has come to you, they're excited, kind of like we were just describing with the painting or the drawing. They're really excited and they're looking to share that excitement with you, and they're almost seeking some sort of a value judgment in the form of praise from you. And you're really trying at this point, because you know better, to not go that route. Here's something instead that you can do that you can very quickly pull out. So if your child has been working on something for a really long time and you were noticing that as it was happening and you let them be, they spent a while concentrating and then they finally finish and they come running up to you and they're like, look what I did. Instead of saying, wow, honey, that's so awesome, you simply just say, you must be so proud of yourself, or you worked so hard on that, and then that's it. Now, I will tell you this, all of the tips that I'm sharing with you, I personally do all of them with both of my children. And because my 3-year-old has been hearing these things from me since she was a baby, because I learned about this when she was just 6 months old, because she's had so much experience with it, she has actually adopted some of these attitudes for herself now, and she will echo them back to me before I even really have a chance to think about it. So for example, she loves working with magnetiles, and when she builds some little structure that she was working hard on for a really long time and it's balanced just right, when she's excited about it, she'll come running over to me and say, look, mommy, look what I did. And I will immediately tell her, you must be so proud of yourself. And then she says to me, yeah, I worked really hard on it. And it's just incredible to me that even at 3, she can verbalize something like that. And I can tell that she truly feels that way. She feels pride in her own work, and she doesn't need me to say, wow, good job. So it just goes to show you the power of what these different ways of approaching offering your child feedback and encouragement can do. Tip number 4 is to focus on the effect that your child's behavior had on the other child or person. This tip can be applied to all different types of situations and children of all ages, but because it is so specifically applicable to young children who are learning how to share, that's the example that I'm going to give you. And so what this would look like in practice is, again, you're on a play date, your child has decided of her own volition to share her toy with the other child, and you've noticed, instead of saying, good sharing, or I'm so proud of you for sharing, instead, if you feel the need to say anything at all, again, because you don't always have to, if you want to say something, then the best thing that you can say is, wow, look at the smile on her face. She's so happy that you decided to share that with her. And that subtle shift in how you've responded to your child, spontaneously sharing with another child, makes a world of difference in her learning and in her thought processes about what just happened. Instead of your child learning, wow, I feel really good about myself because my mom's proud of me for sharing, I did something good. Instead, her thought process becomes, okay, I'm looking at the other child's face. I'm noticing the smile that my mother just pointed out to me. Yeah, she does kind of look happy, and wow, I did that. I created that positive, happy feeling in another person just because I decided to share with her, and that makes me feel really good inside. And that's what you want, because the reality is you're not always going to be there to reinforce your child sharing with somebody else. So you want your child to know what that good feeling feels like, and to want to share with other children for the simple act of sharing because it's the right thing to do. And tip number 5 is to ask questions. So if you notice that your child is working on something, or they've finished something, hopefully you're not interrupting them in the middle of it, but if they've finished something and you really just have this desire to say good job or offer them some sort of encouragement, instead of going that route, simply ask them a very detailed question about what it is that they're showing you or that you've noticed. You could say, why did you decide to use the color blue for that part? And this works equally well in situations like we've been discussing, where your child is coming to you after they've done something that they're really excited about and they're looking for some sort of a reaction or praise from you. And they start off with, look, Daddy, look at my drawing, or look what I did. Instead of responding with the typical one-liner of praise or going too over the top with it, then you simply just turn it into a question. You say, yeah, I see, buddy. Do you want to tell me more about it? Or instead of you immediately pointing out what your favorite part of the drawing was to your child, you turn it into a question and you say, yeah, I see. What's your favorite part of this drawing? And you would honestly be surprised that children are totally fine with that type of a response. They will immediately just launch off into an explanation of why they put those lines here and what this scribble means, or why they've constructed their tower in the exact way that they did. And they're just happy to go on about that. So they don't always need that judgment from us. So those are my 5 tips for offering encouraging feedback instead of praise in your Montessori home. And if you are interested in learning more about how to implement Montessori practices at home with your children, I do have a comprehensive e-course that you can check out that walks you through it step by step. And I will leave a link in the description box down below for you to check out if you are interested in that. And just in case you are new to my channel, I did want to let you know that this video is part of a much larger series called Montessori at Home, which is aimed at providing practical tips and advice for busy parents like you and I for implementing Montessori practices at home with your children. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in learning more about, then you might consider subscribing to my channel. This way you don't miss a new video, because I do upload a new one just like this one every single week. Thanks so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time.